Hola. Comenzamos de nuevo.
Hello, we'll begin the third roundtable now. And it is the turn of the third roundtable with secure betting, safe betting. Bo Bernard, Vice President of the University of Nevada in Las Vegas, and will be moderated by Cecilia Pastor, Deputy Director of the Department of Inspection of Gaming, Felipe Sanchez Pedreño from the Department of Integrity of the Royal Spanish Federation of Football. Francisco Martinez, La Liga lawyer, solicitor. Alberto El Jarrat, CEO of Sportium. And Santiago Asensi, Managing Director, Managing Partner of Asensi Abogados. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I was thinking if you'd said to me in 1996 when I lived in Spain, there's one more. Forgive me. Claudia Marinelli, oh no. Claudia Marinelli, I skipped you. Criminal Intelligence Officer and Project Manager for the Match Fixing Tax Task Force in Interpol. Now we're complete. Well, thank you very much to you all. If you'd said to me in 1996 when I lived in Spain, in Valencia, and I could constantly observe, and I was watching all the La Liga matches when Fernando Hierro was playing, my favorite Real Madrid player, and Ronaldo in Barcelona, that one day I would be co-presenting a program on law, technology, responsible gambling in the headquarters of the National Police Force here in Madrid. I would have thought, how lucky I am, what a life. You got there, it's so impressive. And in our global world, it's so important to share information, to build bridges and alliances like this. I'm the director of the International Gaming Institute in the Las Vegas University, and I'm studying the history of casinos, gambling, gaming. And I'm very proud to be co-founder of this islands with Jackie and with Mariela. Let me tell you a little bit of the history about my city. I was also thinking about the laws and the history of my university and my city. The secret of the success of Las Vegas is that we eliminated the era of the mafia. The secret of the history of Las Vegas is that the era of the mafia really was not a very successful era. It was not financially successful. Las Vegas became a successful and global destination when it became clean. A clean destination open to everybody. And in the same spirit, I'm so glad to be here in order to support a clean world and an open world. So thank you all for your participation. And thank you everyone in the audience. Thank you. Hello, good morning, good afternoon. It's getting late, but as was foreseen, we will try to be direct and efficient, because here we have the 300 survivors, and I don't know who will be left in the auditorium when we get to 3 p.m. So in this third roundtable, we will continue to identify different types of fraud that affect gambling. We will return to the subject of corruption in sports, and with the speakers we have here representatives of sports organizations and operators and police forces. We will try to analyze all the difficulties that there are in order to build a case, and we'll see how we build a case in order to be able to take to criminal jurisdictions. The importance of collaboration among all the sports organizers, betting organizations and authorities. We will look at other types of fraud, and in the end everything is mixed together, and it's all linked to a subject which is key, which is identity fraud and bypassing funds. We will talk a new phenomenon which we've been observing for a few years now, which is the use of AI, artificial and automated robots, and all of the risks that arise from that and the possibility of detection and persecution. We will first of all talk with Francisco Martin from the legal department of La Liga, and with him we will study the criminal penalties related to betting, particularly in the specific cases. In Spain, we will concentrate on cases where gambling was the motivating force or had a main role in the commitment of the crime. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Cecilia. Wait for the presentation to come up on the screen. Firstly, I would like to thank you for the opportunity of participating in this forum and for the invitation. At the time, with this third roundtable, I would also like to thank the audience, their capacity for resisting and of remaining in the auditorium. I think they have had intuition about the fact that lawyers are coming up on stage, but I will try to be as concise as properly to give you some ideas of those practical aspects of my talk, which will talk about betting and sports betting corruption. Sports corruption came into our penal code in 2010 on the 22nd of June, and our colleague in the first roundtable from the Brazilian police with the crime in Brazil of sports corruption. And here we have made progress with different procedures and with different results in the different situations which have been brought to court with, we hope that this will lead us to a good end with the excellent work that is done in prevention, in arrests, and in the compiling of the necessary evidence so that when proceedings are initiated, we can achieve a satisfactory end with a conviction that has good enough supportive evidence in our legal system. The crime is introduced in the socio-economic paragraph, and this makes us see that sports corruption crime is related with economic activity that has a significant importance and effects in different situations. It is defined in paragraph 4 of Article 286b. There is specific reference to the first, second, and third paragraphs, because in the fourth paragraph it says that what is said is applicable in remission as an efficient legislative technique. So my main intention with my talk was just to give a couple of ideas related to betting, and betting as something after the penal description of if the gamblers can be active subjects in the crime, if a gambler could be convicted as an active subject or as a passive subject, as an author, as a participant in our legal code under the crime of sports corruption. As it is laid down, it talks about specific subjects that are qualified. These are the managers, administrators, employees, or collaborators of a sports entity, like any sports entity, apart from it being a club or a limited company or any other legal condition, and then the sportsmen, referees, and judges. So the question is where the gamblers or the bettors could be participants as in the crime. My point of view is yes, there's part of the doctrine that corroborates that. Particularly, we mention Mr. Julian Sanchez Melgar, a judge in the Supreme Court, who is also a lecturer of the Supreme Court decision that resolved a cassation from the province of Navarre, which convinced authors of the crime of the Osasuna case. Judge Melgar considers that the gamblers can be, although they're not managers or they're not players, they're not referees, but they are they place the bets because there's no exclusion, but the other subjects, because in the crime could be collaborators or cooperating in the committing of the crime. Following this line of thought, obviously somebody who's betting could operate in cooperation with one of the special subjects that has been described, like a manager of the club, a player, or a referee, and therefore they could have a participation, therefore they could have a penal responsibility for committing the crime, not as author of the crime as such, undoubtedly, because their participation would be reduced to cooperator, necessary collaborator. But I do personally consider that it is worthwhile, or it was worthwhile, drawing attention to this, because the people who place the bet can commit that, but that they have a specific scope that I do not, and other things may coincide, where the behavior of the person placing the bet can also be considered. For example, in proceedings underway, like in the Oikos case, where the gamblers who were investigating these proceedings were not initially because of sports corruption, but they were pursued for fraud. The same type of behavior could be liable to having two different paragraphs of two different types of crime, but not because of that can you discard the crime of sports corruption. There's a specific mention also to betting, and there is introduction to gambling in Article 286 quarter of the Penal Code, which is done well after the introduction of this type of crime in 2010, and then there was a modification which refers to the first time to the gamblers since 2015. There is no doubt that in spite of the motives drawn up in the law with regards to gambling, there isn't a detailed explanation of the reason of including gambling games as an aggravating factor, but the legislator perceives that the corruption of sports crime has an interest to fix results, and the aim of the corruption with regards to the sports event is alternatively to alter or to influence in betting and gambling. This is perceived by the legislators, so they decide to introduce the environment of gambling and betting as an aggravating factor, and perhaps we should think about whether these types of behavior which are trying to be punished through aggravation should be specified as an independent type of behavior without it being established as an aggravating factor as it is laid down in Germany. It is also differentiated with sports corruption. So, and then there's the fraudulent alteration in gambling and gaming, and we may think about whether the legislator could do that in order to have include these types of behavior which are more difficult to fit in as an aggravating factor. There isn't a very specific penalty for it, and of these ideas is something I leave on the table for you, but the legislator undoubtedly sees that there is a problem with betting, and this is introduced therefore as a specific aggravating factor for paragraph 4 of 286 in sports corruption. And there are common aggravating factors which also affect paragraph 4, which are especially relevant benefits, profits and advantages, which are developing this within a criminal organization group, and these are common aggravating factors. But then there are these specific aggravating factors when the behavior also has the end of gambling, of gaming, that has a specific aggravation factors, and particularly when it occurs in a national or international level. This clearly refers to the competitions organized by the Professional Football League. This relates to the type of conviction and penalty. These kinds of activities of sports corruption have a prison sentence of 4 to 7 years, or a fine for an individual. The mention to a juridical person, the juridical person can also be responsible. There are accusations of legal persons in procedures for fixing, and there are examples of that. That can be important. And another important thing is the aggravating factor for the sentencing, because as we said, when it can lead us to sentencing at the higher end of from 6 months to 4 years, or even to go to the next level, which would increase the sentencing significantly for the perpetrators, and even the legal person in turn would take along with it the compliance plans and what the legal persons have to face with regards to exemption of responsibility, this also affects prevention and training to prevent all of the aggravating factors. So I thought it was relevant as a second idea to bring in the express mention of gambling with regards to the type of sports corruption in our criminal code. It is so important that, let's say, in the chronograph of legal proceedings that exist and where we've had the opportunity of participating to date, there's one missing, which is the Conifera case, which is from this year, but we have not included this, but chronologically in football, in football competitions, in this context, there are 9 proceedings underway for fixing. If we look at when the match fixing was done, they coincide with the aim of altering sports betting with the introduction of this criminal paragraph. One of the motivations for fixing is to alter the results of the gambling or betting. This is something that happened in the 3rd division. It involved a 3rd division club in the region of Valencia, Benigànim it's called, and this coincided with the aggravating factor. So the legislator was watching carefully and brought in time the mention of this aggravating factor and specified it then, and like a forecast, the remainder of fixing incidents that are investigated have a relationship with the world of gambling. But not only that, but what is most concerning, there's the phenomenon of the participation of the bringing of criminal organizations or criminal groups which somehow are promoting or inducing or leading to corruption, sports corruption behavior with the gambling. And in the proceedings, I will now finish, as I said, fortunately, you will see that we've had 4 convictions. And just to round off now, we will have the opportunity in the case of the fixing of the Eldense team. This is the first time we've been called upon to present the accusation, and we will have the opportunity of testing the aggravating factor of the influence in gambling and betting, also with the coordination and together with the aggravating factor of belonging to a criminal organization or group. So this will elevate the higher level of conviction allowed by our penal code. Thank you very much. I'm sorry not to have more time, but thank you, Francisco. We have taken up 16 minutes, but I wanted to talk about the difficulty of getting evidence and the importance that this has, and we'll have the possibility of talking about this when we know what organizations and operators do.
Now we give the floor to Felipe Sánchez Cedreño. He comes from the Integrity Department of La Liga. He will tell us about the legal mandate that has been issued for protection of sports. Felipe, you have the floor. Spanish Federation of Football, as a non-profit organization has as its main objective the promotion, organization, regulation, and development and practice of football across Spanish territory. Would like to thank you for your invitation to take part in this meeting and to discuss such an important topic such as sports gaming, sports betting and the impact on the focus of the federation, that is to say, the protection and promotion, in so much as both relevant concepts may be impacted by betting. We understand that the synergy of efforts and the synergy of joint activities can be extremely important. We know that gambling or betting is a legal activity in Spain. It is subject to some limitations, to some controls, and the federation, Spanish Federation, of course, has an utmost respect to any activity which is carried out under that regulations. We fully respect those regulations. Therefore, from there, we are concerned about two elements which are related from betting. That is to say, it's those that are placed in football as recruitment, as leisure. Even if we are talking about leisure, if there is a failure to comply with disciplinary code, for instance, disciplinary code of the Spanish Federation of Football or the gaming law. So those limitations having already set up, even if we are talking about a specific field. On top of that, we are also concerned about betting when a gambler places its bets in a game he's engaged in. This is not only failure of disciplinary norms, but this could also be a precursor of a penal crime. So this is a basic explanation. And as I say, it is the focus of attention of the federation. We are concerned about betting, and there is a concept that has been mentioned this very same morning, that is to say, addiction. So, for instance, addiction to new technologies and also easiness of betting, not only to people of age, but also to minors. We do understand that the protection and the safe football should be based on fair play and compliance of norms and regulations. I mentioned before there is a possibility to failing to comply disciplinary code. We are not talking about disciplinary code of the Spanish Federation, but not only that, there is an ethical code of UEFA or FIFA, which also sets out a number of limitations for those which are involved or in football. This protection offered by the Spanish Federation of Football, we do understand that should not only be passive in nature, but we do carry out a number of initiatives as well as projects that help us advocate for safe and responsible safe football. Here, I would like to mention our national training program on integrity. Each session, we give training about awareness raising for integrity and protection of integrity. They are organized chronologically by competitions. football competitions that are relevant to us. As I say, they are chronologically and geographically arranged for us to advocate and promote safe football. Those actions are carried out together with the beneficiaries. This is not only about setting out concepts, but seeing which are the limits, what is the danger or the repercussions of overcoming that limit. And it is also an invitation to reflect. If you are part of the football world, if you have made it there, we understand that this is your passion. So these fraudulent or criminal activities will move you away, will take you away from that you are passionate about. You will never win. There may be some factors that may deviate your attention, but at the end of the day, you will always lose. And it is, well, the response on part of the football clubs is highly welcoming. At the end of the day, we are all stakeholders to widespread and to communicate a shared message, a common message, to reach out all the competitions that we are involved. Okay, we carry out sessions from the integrity department of the Spanish Federation, but we also have integration points in all of our regional subsidiaries, which complements all the actions that we have carried out. Common standards are being followed, and therefore the training that is given out nationally and regionally is consistent. We often meet with UEFA and FIFA, and we are aware of the type of or this type of policies which are being developed around us in other sports. Last year, we fulfilled by 100% the objectives that we have set out for the teams playing in our competitions, and we discovered at the end of the day that we are talking about addiction to new technologies, emerging technologies, new technologies, and we are talking about new technologies in every single field. We are talking about new technologies on our day-to-day basis. And now, if we are talking about football, we cannot forget that match fixing and betting has been open or are now present in new technologies, and therefore virtual or online betting. We are all aware of esports. There are already competitions, there are already clubs that have opened the doors to that, and that should also be protected. We have discovered that there is a need to extend that training. Now we have a specific training session for that, and which is known as general fraud. We are doing that jointly with esports. And as I say, we are seeing significant prevalence, increasing prevalence, and it's growing exponentially. In addition to that national training program, we also carried out monitoring in joint cooperation with our fraud detection system, which is a world leader in providing integral solutions for sport fraud prevention. And as a result of that, last season, we covered up to 5 football categories. And I should say that our federation is one of the federations which is leading that theme, that subject. This gives us momentum and motivation to continue doing it. We know that monitoring should not only be taken or done on face-to-face matches or games, but also to online gaming or football. In this protection and defense of football, there is an aspect which is also very important to us and that has been mentioned in the 2 previous roundtables. That is to say, the cooperation of each and every one of the stakeholders that are present here is essential, is crucial. This is joint action, and it is easier if we work together. If we work together, we will end up passing on our message. Our message will be impactful, and so that we can all together can change the reality. And as I say, if we travel that path together. there is a message that we have launched for the Spanish Federation of Football, which is the following: if you are part of football, if important to you, so you should move away from betting. Zero betting, not even a leisure betting. There is no need to be part of the football world to do any betting whatsoever. At the end of the day, the limit, the line is very thin. Dividing line is very thin. We are all well aware of the big consequences that unsafe betting may entail. I would like to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to take part in this roundtable. Thank you very much, Felipe. I would like to highlight the work that you carried out with lower level competitions. Well, probably this is populated by more vulnerable people, young people, because of the purchasing power. And I'm saying this out of my personal experience due to the great difficulty, due to its capillarity, the high number of federations, teams, etc. Yes, it is true. We have detected significant lack of awareness. That's what's very, very important for us to reach them out. They do not have the capacity to assess the magnitude of the negative repercussions. They are young people, and their vulnerability is what actually drives us to protect them. Of course, we protect all the type of competitions. We know that it is essential, but we do understand that this population is at higher risk. At the end of the day, the tools used by international organizations are very clever or evil. They know whom to attack. One of the training sessions of awareness raising, we tell them that match fixing, which is aimed at having a profit, that is to say, to move on to illegal betting. Criminal organizations are very clear as to the link, which is the key link to succeed in the efforts. The criminal organization will deploy the charm to achieve their goals. But if the person who is on the playing field does not cooperate, the other links are out of the game. And that is the starting point when it comes to awareness raising. And that vulnerability, that vulnerable group of people are the ones that need most protection because they lack that awareness. Thank you. Thank you, Felipe. So now what La Liga is doing in terms of monitoring, what the Spanish Federation of Football is doing, the game operators are also monitoring the betting markets where they operate, and they may also detect abnormal situations that may be indicators of fraud associated to match fixing. To hear about how to detect those things and how to detect those things and the importance of operators within the framework of detection, we have with us Alberto Jarras, which is the Managing Director of Sportium. Alberto, be welcome. Thank you so much, Cecilia. I would like to thank the organizers, Jacqueline and others. I am surrounded by lawyers and police officers. I don't know whether I will try to be up to the standards. The level of our speakers, of the presentations, is very, very high. This is a topic we are well aware of, we are sensitive to. We've been so for many, many years now. I didn't bring any presentations with me, yet I would like to do my best to share our experience and what we do from our betting shop, both face-to-face and online. In 2014, we were pioneers. I don't know whether we were the first ones or one of the first ones that implemented a protocol of collaboration with La Liga. Back in 2014, we had Javier Tebas, that has joined the institution short ago. He set out a number of red lines of zero tolerance of some aspects like match fixing, violence, and others. We took it from there and we engaged in collaboration that has been ongoing ever since, and which has set out the basis of what brings us here, that is to say, collaboration among the stakeholders. I would like to start from something which is basic. When we are talking about responsible gaming, when we are talking about match fixing, sometimes there is a kind of a trend to mix things. When it comes to match fixing, there are two clear victims here. First one is sport. The normal sports activity is being disrupted, and when match fixing is driven by economic forces, well, betting shops are also another victim, because criminal groups have kind of eliminated the uncertainty of that event for them to make a profit at the expense of the betting shops. Sometimes we are talking about illegal betting, and it seems that we are criminalizing betting or betting shops. And as I say, oftentimes, well, betting shops are also victims. A number of important concepts should be clarified here based on our experience. This is a joint effort that requires cooperation of everyone. Sigma, it is a platform where all the national operators share information, share potential alarms that help us build up a case that may be taken to court, prosecuted, you name it. Yet this is a drop in the ocean of match fixing. In a global world, criminal groups are not based in Spain, they are based somewhere else. Those criminal groups that will do match fixing, a football result or a market, you name it. Even if we are talking about a Spanish competition, they will not do it to obtain a profit, to make a profit in Spanish betting shops, but in places where regulations are weak or non-existent. This is an extremely complex phenomenon. In so much as there are territories, geographies which are grey in terms of regulation or fully unregulated, what we are doing is just to try to get rid of water on a boat which is full of holes. Even if we fix our hole, we are in a global world. When we talk about our regulation, and I'm truly saying this, I'm really, really proud of being subject to that regulation. It is an exemplary, it's a role model regulation which has been followed suit by very many other geographies. But as I say, this is a global phenomenon. We collaborate through the Sigma platform in Spain, yet this is not sufficient. This is not enough, because what happens in the rest of the world has an impact on us, and we may not have that information in Spain of what is happening somewhere else. Users in Spain are 1.5 million. In 2015, we joined the IBI, which is an international platform where all the major or big operators are present, where the activity of millions of users is being monitored. Sharing that information makes us be more effective. IBI, let me share some figures with you. In the first half of the year, some 135 alerts have been triggered. Cases have been reported to the relevant authorities and entities and bodies. We at Sportium, we have identified 5 alerts that have been reported. We have gotten the feedback that other members of the platform of our association confirm that our case had a base, was real. Okay, we're talking about 1 million users nationally. Each operator has its specific database with a partial view. If we look at that globally, unless we work together, we will not succeed in tackling this global problem. Spanish regulation has been a role model. It is not that I'm saying it. Other regulators say it. They are using it as a reference for implementing them in the relevant countries. But ideally, we would need that 100% of the world has the regulations, gaming regulations, or betting regulations. Karen has more of a global view, but I don't think that I think that less than 50% in the world is regulated. And I believe that over 50% is gray territory, where someone gets registered and does not follow any approved regulations, where transactions and operations cannot be traced or monitored as we do here in Spain, where these criminal groups can easily do identity fraud and they will not be prosecuted. If there is no regulation on betting, there will be no development, or will not be included in the penal code. We cannot, of course, prosecute any crime if it is not regulated. Match fixing that may take place in first and second division and other lower divisions or categories are not necessarily designed to commit fraud on the betting shops on the territory. Well, because we have a strong identification system of users, because there are specific prohibitions for minors, as well as subjective prohibitions for those who are interested in competitions, that is to say, referees, coach, players, technical staff. So it is much more difficult to commit fraud on us, where we have strong regulations, versus committing fraud somewhere else. This does not eliminate the risk of being victims of it, because some players may be cheated or which may be weak links of the chain. Elite athletes make big money, but when it comes to lower categories, we are talking about football, but we should also mention tennis, which is number one sports in terms of alert generation. There we find athletes and players who may not be able to make ends meet and may lack any training or any awareness. That is to say, they are prone to being victims of these fraudulent activities. When it comes to match fixing, betting shops, as I say, in many cases we become victims, but at the same time we are part of the solution, because we manage a great deal of data. Sometimes we penalize new technologies, but new technologies offer advantages when it comes to managing our data, to protect the good ones and to prosecute criminal groups and villains. All those data that we manage are made available to all the authorities, any party that may prosecute those criminal groups. I just don't want to go over time. I know we are a bit short for time, and I will be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much, Alberto. I just want to establish a framework. And well, drawing on what Alberto told us about Sigma, this is a platform that we have in the DG for gaming regulations. This is a system to receive alerts from different players, to carry out our analysis and to report that to the police, or to send out our reporting to the police. We work under the European Convention about Manipulation of Sports Competition, Macaulay Convention, which is a European norm or convention open to everyone, precisely because of what you told us about this international global issue that affects us all, and that we don't know where the origin of the risk is located, so to speak. This convention establishes the setting up of national platform. Spain has not ratified it. We don't have the national platform, but we have created a national commission to fight manipulation of sports competition and sports betting, where we have the participation of leagues, police forces, all the law enforcement agencies, and others. Okay, I just would like to clarify it on these points. This is a universal issue. We all agree with that. The solutions that we are delivering are local, but we are trying to make an effort to integrate ourselves with the other stakeholders. Sigma is focusing on the Copenhagen group, which is like the European Sigma, where all the European alerts are being centralized. And now, question. And this is linked to what one of the participants mentioned in the first round table, which is about face-to-face betting. In this model of monitoring and control that we implement, but it is based on verification of identity, register, and traceability of all the transactions and operations. That does not exist in face-to-face betting. As far as we know, there is no register of the user. I don't know the traceability of transactions. I don't know where it starts, where it finishes, if any. Do you think that could be a risk because they are, in fact, match fixing impacts both baseline and online betting? And what the person is also asking is to what extent face-to-face betting could support this ecosystem of prevention, detection, and prosecution of match fixing. Well, everything counts. Everything adds up to. At the end of the day, it's about having maximum information, maximum number of sources which allow us to identify something which is abnormal and to report it to the relevant authorities and players. The fact that in digital transactions, online transactions, users are perfectly identified, the information that we manage, both platform or whenever we made it known to the sport entities, we do not disclose or facilitate personal details unless there is a judge that may request us to disclose that personal information or personal details. So at the end of the day, what we are handling or managing are the transactions, the movements, the number of abnormal odds or bets that are just abnormal, the fact that there are some markets, specific markets for some events, and they say, oh, this is strange, this is weird. So when we are seeing an X number of goals or anything that may help us, sources of information that may help us identify that something abnormal is taking place, is completely feasible with everything that we are doing. It enriches our information, even if we have the information about the person who placed the bet. Even if we will never have the opportunity to check whether it is legal or not, we will never disclose that information with anyone because of the data protection law. So the match fixing, what is of concern to us or what matters to us, it doesn't really matter whether that information comes from an identified source or an unidentified source. Well, we just want to have data, the data that will help us trigger an alarm. Thank you very much. Fraud in betting linked to match fixing, most of the times, is also connected with identity fraud. The person who bets uses the identity of another person that has obtained in a fraudulent manner. This identity fraud, which has the objective of hide the real identity of the gamer, it is also used for other reasons. For instance, those who have self-excluded themselves, those who use the gaming platform to launder money or to use stolen credit cards, just to mention some examples. In recent years, we have also seen the proliferation of automated software, that is to say, bots. And in many cases, what we are seeing is that those bots are being offered on the side of the game as a service for financial investments. So we have Financial Ascensi with us, who is the director partner of Ascensi Abogados law firm. Thank you very much, Cecilia and Jacqueline, for the invitation, and to the National Police Force for sharing the facilities with us for this summit. I will be brief in my presentation. I'm quite obedient, therefore I will use 10 minutes allotted to me. Well, these conferences or these summits are being broadcast on streaming. We don't know who is at the other end of the line, and I am the last but one speaker of the day, and because we are all used to eating 3 times a day, I understand that our audience is hungry already. I will stand up as I need my prescription glasses. I am a partner of a law firm specialized in gaming. Most of the cases that we've been dealing with up until 3 years ago are the typical ones that you may expect in a regulatory law firm and of compliance, and we represent around 80% of the operators, 80% of the market of online betting. And for the last 2 to 3 years, situation has changed quite a lot in terms of the structure of our law firm due to the high number of demands or complaints of users against operators due to different things, but primarily because of the setting out of limits on the bettings and because of the cancellation of freezing of the bank accounts. My presentation, I'm sure that you have read a lot about it on different papers. Well, sometimes there is not a clear distinction. They do not make a clear distinction of what is legal or illegal. People often say, oh, whenever I have a game, then I get limitations. Limitations are put on me. This is what gamers say. But here we're talking about 2 fraudulent behaviors. So these are the counterparty betting. So the usual ones are the sure bets. Sure bets are the ones that are being done on 2 operators, and then where all the options are taken up. For instance, a tennis match between Nadal and Federer. So all the bets go for Nadal on betting shop 1, and Federer betting shop 2. In any of the cases, we will be winning. Is this legal or illegal? To my mind, to my perspective, the moment you get rid of randomness, the moment you get rid about the lack of uncertainty about the result of a game, we are talking about something which is not legal, or rather illegal. This is not arbitrage, but it is quite frequent as well. Value bets. Well, bets that should be paid are 1.2, but the operator who has 10,000 or 20,000 markets per day, when it comes to place that bet, may have made a mistake, and instead of paying 1.5, pays 5.1. All that is detected through IT bots. IT bots work in the following fashion. First of all, they calculate their own odds. Same as an operator, as any operators, bots have their own system that help them calculate, work out the odds that should be paid in each of the events that are offered by all the operators involved in the game. Then error detection comes in, and then the amount of money to be bet. The bot does that, taking into account the bet that each of the players have made. Cases. What operators do is to set out a number of limits so that the users that are using bots, those who are winning all the time, not because they are highly talented, because they are using different technical means to commit fraud. Not all the judges understand that. Not all the judges give us reason, and sometimes the verdicts are quite sentences are quite appealing. So in that case, we had a user who was placing bets every 8 seconds and was placing hundreds of bets on a daily basis. The case said, well, there may be indications, but there is no proof. There is no proof of any fraudulent activity. This has been instructed by court number 10 in Valencia. That history of betting, here we can see that several bets are being made in the very same seconds. Around 222 bets over 10 hours, with a history of bets 14,000 over 6 months. All that carried out by a single person. This is a railway operator. He said that yes, he played or gambled for 5 hours on the row, but that does not mean that he was using any platform or any bot. He said that he had placed his bets in different sports in different places in the world, that was not conclusive evidence. Fraudulent behaviors. Most typical ones are using several accounts through the purchases of identity card. If you give me a copy of your ID cards, I will give you 300 euros. It starts off 150 euros, then it will move up to 300 euros. And then we have the transfer of the account to a third party in exchange of a percentage of the gain. All the parties are engaged. You may borrow my account so that you use it, and there is a person carrying out transaction with 50 or 60 accounts, different accounts, and then he shares the proceeds or the gains of the profit. The main problem is that the regulation that was drafted in 2011 was not drawn up taking into account this type of fraudulent activities, or at least not in so much as they have been committed. So therefore, the judges and the courts do not have any solid basis for the rulings. Most of the cases are ruled in favor of operators, yet there is a significant number of cases where judges are lost in their rulings. Some judges love to handle atypical or uncommon cases. Well, they do good instructions, they study deeply, and at the end of the day, the rulings that are issued gave us a reasonable rulings in our favors. But then we also have other judges that, because they see an atypical case, they say, I just don't want to do that, I want to get rid of it, and then they just issue a ruling against us. So in terms of the regulation, the only article where we support ourselves and which is not fully clear, it is found in Royal Decree 1614-2011. It is Article 33, Section 2. The obligations of the operator. It is an obligation for the operator the operator is obliged, whenever to his judgments, he detects or suspects a fraudulent operation, he may freeze the account or suspend the account or the user. If there is evidence for that, well, he may cancel that account and he may report it to the relevant authorities. We do feel that this article could be better drafted. We do feel that there could be another regulation or article reinforcing that one. And now talking about all the cases, and more specific in relation to Article 33.2, there was a ruling in Vera Almeria. Well, they do not take into account that the user had the possibility to defend themselves. If we go back to the previous article, we can see that everything is left on the hands of the operator, judgment of the operator, with no need to go into any contradiction. And this should be done in this fashion, with a preventative character and to the judgment of the operator, because there is no time to carry out any investigation. The cases of pathological gaming, at the end of the day, there is no time or technological and human resources to invest on and to complete an investigation, considering that thousands of bets are being done on a fully every day. Solutions. As I said, the legislation should be amended. Amendments that could help operators to have more legal tools to use in the courts. We are at a time where all the regulations that are being drawn up, well, we are talking about responsible gaming, playing well, rules protecting the users, but there should also be norms protecting operators beyond police investigations. We celebrate them whenever we hear of them, whenever we see them on paper, but those legislation amendments should be urgently done. And then, of course, collaboration that all the stakeholders are carrying out with DGOG, more specifically Sigma, which very soon will become a reality, has been approved by the Parliament. When the law, that's 2013, will be approved at the Parliament, then it will be finally approved. And of course, with law enforcement agencies. This is all from me. The only thing that I would like to add before I finish is the following. All the activities of fraudulent gamers is causing huge economic harm. Millions of euros. This is not reflected in the official memories or the data are included in there. But when we see official data in our law firm and also data about taxation from our clients, we can conclude that we are not talking about a few thousand euros or 4 or 5 fraudulent gamers. As I say, we deal with 1,500 cases on a daily basis. Every day we receive 2 or 3 complaints. And those 1,500 cases are not being represent not only one user, but 5 or 10 or 20 users. So we do feel that this is a problem that should be eliminated, because the huge economic consequences of repercussions from it may take some of the operators in our country out of business. I have a question now. In your last slide, you told us about 3 elements: regulations, operators, and law security agencies. So here there are no regulators. This is a very complex topic. Therefore, I propose to set up a monographic session to go deeper into regulation. Police forces, Claudio will be with us next and will tell us more about it. And now, operators, my question, if the key to this topic is identity verification and control of transactions, what could operators do when it comes to the registration or through the life cycle of the gamer, that is to say checks, ongoing checks to ensure that nothing is abnormal, control of means of payment, preventing, anonymous means of payment. What can you tell us about that? Well, at the end of the day, operators, fortunately, we have implemented technical measures at the highest level of standards. Those operators will work with the verifications and the checks that they carry out are of a high level, yet fraudulent betting takes place. Sometimes these operators, when it comes to implementing all those checks, are already late because criminal organizations are really fast, and sometimes, oftentimes they go ahead. When users complain, I cannot really bet. There are limitations on it. There is no right to place a bet. Why there should be a right to place a bet? Why an operator should be obliged to place a bet? Users are not obliged, operators are not obliged either. Same as an insurance company may not charge me, or for instance a 40-year-old driver who never had an accident, surely will benefit for a specific premium. But perhaps a 25-year-old driver who has 3 car accidents per year may have a higher premium. At the end of the day, operators are no different from any other industries or sectors. For instance, insurers that take measures to mitigate the risk of their activity. Something which is as clear as that is not always understood by some judges. This is not a reasoning that I am improvising. This is Article 1256 of the Civil Code. Why an operator should be obliged to place a bet? It seems that sometimes the betting contracts and the terms of condition, there should be a framework contract regulating the relationship between operators and users. Each place falls under a gaming contract, and the contract is not formalized up until the operator admits the bet that the user is proposing. Everything that has to do with announcement of the odds, this is pre-contractual basis, but the contract is not formalized up until the operator approves the bet that the user wants to make. The user says, I want to place my bet, and then the operator said, no, you cannot do that. There will be a limitation about what you may bet. We will pay you that odds, but this is the limit that you can bet, okay? And if you are not happy, I invite you to leave. I would like to go back to bots. If we are talking about automated software that some users download on their computers, from where they carry out thousands of transactions and where the real identity of the person behind all that is unknown, we could be talking about an instrument which is being covered criminals. They are making a profit and then committing fraud. To continue deepening into all these elements, we have Claudio Marinelli, who is Criminal Intelligence Officer and Project Manager of Interpol's Match Fixing Task Force. Claudio, thank you so much for being with us today. Be welcome. Thank you very much, Cecilia. I would like to extend my gratitude to the National Police Force of Spain and to my friend David, who sent an invitation for me to be here. I would like to thank Jacqueline. Now, after the panelist intervention, I'm being left with a hot potato. I would like to tell you what we do at Interpol. As an association that represents national police forces internationally in the field of sports corruption and illegal gaming. Interpol has been working for more than 15 years in illegal betting, illegal gambling, and corruption in sports. Most of those cases are associated with sports events, big international events. The next one will be in the Football World Cup that will take place in Qatar. So regarding corruption in sports, in the center that we have specifically designed for that has been newly created at the start of the year 22, in that division and in the anti-corruption unit, we have a number of tools to fight against corruption in sports, and as well as illegal gambling. The first tool that I would like to mention here is that we gather data from international investigations. This gives us a privileged vision. So we are gathering that information from 195 countries in the world. They share with us data from the criminal investigations. Thanks to that huge amount of data, we have tools to carry out our own investigations and to be aware of the tools that are being used in very many jurisdictions. And now that's where Interpol comes into force. That is to say, connect different police forces working in different countries. And here, that's where we also use other tools available to us. That is to say, the red news. I invite you to find information about the tool that we use at Interpol, which is a very simple tool. And then with these red colors, find a person who's missing, or for instance, a case which is being developed or instructed in a specific legislation, or also to find intelligence or to disseminate intelligence which does not come from a specific country, specific cases. And this is the case now of automatic betting, of bots, and the use of fraudulent identity. So these are not real. What I'm talking about now is not real. In 2018, we disseminated a purple news about the use of identity that was stolen, and where the identity that was stolen was made the holder of account, betting account. When we analyzed the information that we got, and also in this specific case with the collaboration of Spain, we detected a number of investigations that were being carried out, but not only in Spain, but also in other countries, regarding the use of specific betting software. The lawyer sitting here next to me mentioned it very, very well. SureBet, ValueBet are different operating or transactions, but they are all associated with criminal organizations that use or that buy that software to the developers and use it through mullets or mules. So that is to say, they are there and they use credit cards that have been sold, or credit card that has been, or an identity card that has been stolen to open up an account, and they use it to commit fraud to the company. And we are all here talking about collaboration. We are discussing collaboration. If we do not have the collaboration of all the stakeholders who are being present here, sport, police forces, law enforcement agencies, operators, how come we can come out of this problem? We can tackle this problem. Also very important, the alert system that has been used up until now does not deliver the same level of trust that delivered before. Risks is of top importance. Copenhagen Group, the Council of Europe, Macaulay Convention, all those have been based on an alert system which nowadays is no longer reliable. We cannot really rely on it because automatic systems trigger alerts, trigger fake alerts. And here we are discussing how to resolve that problem. We need to resolve this problem all together, jointly. As at the end of the day, law enforcement agencies or police forces detect the case, pass it on to us, we analyze it, we cross it with the information that we have, for instance, in the case coming from Mexico, from the UK. I'm just giving out examples out of my mind. And this is the way of working together, of joint cooperation. So we have published the specific purple news on this. I'd like to show it to you. I have it here with me. Automatic betting, match fixing, money laundering, identity theft, use of stolen identity, technological crime, IT crime, cybercrime. Our colleague from Vienna mentioned this morning about the huge number of cyber crimes. And last but not least, tax evasion. If any gains come from, profit or the gains from betting, and whoever has that money deposited is not the actual holder of the account, well, who knows? Perhaps someone knocked at my door sometime and I say, look, you haven't paid your taxes on your profits, because these are the profits that have been recorded in your account. This is what we are seeing in very many countries, and this is what we are doing from Interpol. Fighting against that with the collaboration of the task force of match-fixing task force, which is made up of 100 countries nowadays. We have the Zempira colleagues, which are members of our task force. Tiago is also a member of the IMFTF from Brazil. This morning we had Pablo from Europol, is also a member of IMFTF. Also members of that task force are representatives of regional police forces such as Europol, and this morning we also had colleagues that are also members of our task force, and this is for us a great honor to have them with us, and that give us reassurance. I would like to highlight here that at Interpol we give utmost importance to gambling. Gambling and betting works the same as any other financial market. That is, money gets in, money gets out. And a betting account works in the same fashion that a banking account. That's why it is a topic that is of great importance to us. And when it comes to analyzing and reporting and resolving it, we do it in the same fashion that if it were a banking account. At Interpol, we bring together all the information that we get from different countries, information which is aimed at being eventually disseminated to help out the law enforcement agencies all over the world. Well, this is a very important topic that you are putting forward, that is to say the burden of proof in penal processes, in penal proceedings. Well, in some cases that cannot be confirmed, and that is based on the information that we get from betting from all the monitoring that federations may make on the events, and as well as the information that we get from operators, betting operators. If that is the case, the burden of proof, we do have a problem. The problem is that many false positives will be generated. This generates lots of false positives. And that kind of creates and generates daunting work. Yes, this is a problem. If we have trusted and relied on alert systems and the systems that offer us monitoring, now we have those systems which are generating fake alerts. Well, perhaps the proposal would be to detect the patterns or trends that are associated with those automatic bots, even if they are difficult to prove at court. Once those patterns or trends are detected, perhaps we could shut them so that altogether we can take them out of the equation. But this is just a random proposition where we are all sitting here to work together. All the stakeholders here have information, and therefore that information is to be shared. Operators are to report cases, sports are to report cases. We, police forces, carry out our work, that is to say, to take in the reporting and then to investigate. But if one of the links is missing, we cannot carry out our work. I do understand that operators, well, even are a bit lost. And the regulatory framework, the legal framework, courts, nowadays when it comes to interpreting something which is unknown to them, they decide to defend the user most of the times. I just would like to add to this. I'd like to share a piece of data with you. All this that we are discussing here, it is not a minor phenomenon. We are not talking about geeks that have developed this software. There are dossiers or portfolios of products that they have software with sure wins, with sure games. They base their selling arguments are based on plots, and legit companies are linked to that scam, to that fraud. Well, I don't know how to refer to them. That is an actual fraud. So whenever we are reaching those levels, so it is not the points of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg. It is a huge iceberg. Some companies do that, and actually they are selling the mode of business. So behind the fraud, there is an actual structure of lawyers, companies that claim that it is financial investments. Well, everything that Alberto has just told us. At the end of the day, the user, from the floor up to here, there is a pile of legislation to defend the users, where operators have Article 33.2 and little else. And 32.2 article is confusing to some judges, not to all of them, but in very many occasions that has been the case. I go back to say to what I said before, the economic damage or harm which is being caused is huge. If we win 8 cases out of 10, the huge loss in those 2 cases is just huge. And the criminals come back with different identities. Perhaps the treasury, we need to knock at the door of all of those who have rented or sold their ID card. Well, this is the end of the class. End of the lesson. Our